Mark Wahlberg had agreed to appear on The View to promote his new biographical drama, expecting some tough questions, but nothing he couldn't handle. However, the atmosphere changed the moment he sat down across from Joy Behar, whose expression held that familiar cocktail of amusement and challenge. And from the very first question, delivered with Joy's trademark sarcastic bite, it was clear that the conversation was veering away from safe Hollywood territory and plunging into Wahlberg's checkered past, political views, and faith, which Joy framed as selective morality, prompting a stiff smile from the actor and an almost audible tightening of the air around.
Ow, the table.
The table as the audience leaned forward, sensing trouble, and when Mark attempted to pivot back to his film, Joy cut in sharply with, "I'm just wondering how someone can sell themselves," as a story of redemption while still supporting policies that harm the very communities you claim to uplift, which was met with a few gasps and murmurs from the studio crowd. And Wahlberg, visibly stunned, responded with a terse, "That's not only unfair, it's dishonest," his Boston accent sharpening as he added that he'd spent the last 2 decades trying to give back, employ hundreds of people, and support youth programs. To which Joy replied, "Then why do your politics still vote against them?" Escalating the tension further. And it was at that point that the interview devolved into overlapping voices, the co-hosts attempting to mediate, but Joy refusing to back down, launching into a barrage of critiques about celebrity hypocrisy, invoking past comments Wahlberg had made about criminal justice and the military, pushing him to his limit, and instead of diffusing, Mark sat back in his chair, visibly angry, saying, "You want a show, Joy? Fine, but don't pretend this is journalism," slapping his lapel mic off his shirt with a sharp flick and standing up. While the producers signaled frantically off camera, Whoopi Goldberg reaching out and muttering something that sounded like, "Mark, don't just breathe," but the damage was done, and with one final stare, Wahlberg walked off the set as the live broadcast abruptly cut to commercial, leaving the panel and audience stunned. The moment caught in hundreds of clips immediately exploded online, drawing fierce opinions from every corner of the internet, with some applauding Joy for holding him accountable and others accusing her of turning an interview into a hostile takedown, while Wahlberg's camp issued a carefully worded statement that Mr. Wahlberg stands by his values and will always speak out when conversations become disingenuous and disrespectful. Joy, ever unrepentant, addressed the incident the next morning, saying on air, "If you can't handle hard questions, don't sit at a hard table," earning applause from the live studio audience, but further polarizing public sentiment, and within days, the fallout began to seep into late-night monologues, editorial pages, and Twitter wars, with think pieces debating whether celebrities should be interrogated on politics or simply allowed to promote their art. And despite the noise, Wahlberg remained largely silent, retreating from public appearances, while Joy's co-hosts grew increasingly weary of the constant tension she invited, reportedly leading to heated meetings behind the scenes about whether her confrontational style was helping or harming the show. And it wasn't long before exclusive behind-the-scenes footage leaked of the moments after the walk-off, revealing a fuming Wahlberg backstage surrounded by handlers, repeatedly asking what the hell kind of ambush was that, while producers pleaded with him to return for damage control, which he refused. And although both sides attempted to move on, the event left an indelible mark on their reputations. Joy's critics now had new ammunition to call her a bully, while Wahlberg's defenders painted him as a victim of a media culture obsessed with gotcha moments. And even months later, the tension lingered. The interview often referenced when discussing the future of political discourse on daytime TV, serving as a cautionary tale of what happens when the lines between promotion and interrogation blur. Beyond recognition, where no one wins and everyone bleeds a little on camera, and for Wahlberg, it served as a bitter reminder that fame didn't grant immunity from attack, while for Joy, it was yet another fire she lit and walked through, unapologetically, fanning the flames as the country watched, divided but captivated, unable to look away from the spectacle of 2 American icons colliding on live television and turning daytime talk into primetime drama. The aftermath of Mark Wahlberg's explosive exit from The View rippled far beyond daytime television, into Hollywood circles, political debate forums, even faith-based communities, who felt both pride and discomfort in how Wahlberg handled the confrontation. And while tabloid headlines milked every frame of his departure, portraying him alternately as a martyr of free speech or a Hollywood hothead, the truth was far more complex, simmering beneath the surface as Wahlberg's inner circle strategized how to regain narrative control, ultimately deciding that silence wouldn't protect him this time. And within weeks, Mark sat down for an exclusive interview, pericoted, tightly controlled with a faith-oriented media outlet, not to clap back at Joy Behar directly, but to clarify his intentions and values, explaining through a calm but firm tone that the experience reminded him why media appearances had grown so performative and unproductive, and how faith doesn't require applause, just action. A quote that quickly went viral in religious and conservative circles, reigniting support from fans who felt he had been baited and ambushed. And yet, while Wahlberg's reputation slowly began to stabilize, Joy Behar remained undeterred, using the incident as a springboard to double down on her long-standing mission of confronting what she described as celebrity-enabled disinformation. And though her ratings spiked in the short term due to the controversy, behind the scenes a quiet unease grew among ABC executives and the View production team, many of whom feared that Joy's increasingly combative interviews could scare off high-profile guests or worse, trigger legal complications if accusations of defamation or targeted hostility were ever raised formally. And while Joy maintained her on-screen persona with practiced ease, even she could not ignore the mounting tension with her co-hosts, particularly Sunny Hostin and Alyssa Farah Griffin, who had both expressed discomfort with how Wahlberg had been handled, citing a missed opportunity for nuanced dialogue over a public spectacle. And that sentiment echoed through editorial columns and think pieces that began asking whether Joy Behar had crossed a line not of legality, but of professionalism, with former show guests anonymously speaking to media outlets about being briefed before interviews on how to keep it light to avoid confrontations like Mark's, painting a picture of a show caught between two identities, hard-hitting journalism, and feel-good celebrity banter, with no clear consensus on which would win out. And amid all this, Mark Wahlberg quietly launched a mentorship initiative in Boston aimed at providing vocational training to underprivileged teens. A move seen by critics as a calculated PR step, but applauded by many others as a genuine investment in the next generation. And when reporters asked whether the project was connected to his clash with Behar, Wahlberg simply replied, "Sometimes God allows storms to bring you back to your purpose," statement that intentionally or not sent a ripple through the same audience who had watched him walk off live TV and now saw him rebuilding from the ashes of conflict, while Joy's path led elsewhere. As mounting internal pressure from producers forced her to meet with ABC's Standards and Practices team, who encouraged her to consider a more balanced interview style in future segments, not as censorship, but as evolution in an increasingly polarized media landscape. And while she outwardly agreed, her next on-air appearance made it clear she hadn't changed, opening the show with, "I hear some people think I'm too blunt. To that I say, you're welcome," earning both laughs and eye rolls in equal measure. And just as the conversation around the Wahlberg incident began to subside, a bombshell leaked in the form of unaired footage from the day of the interview, revealing that moments before the cameras rolled, Joy had been warned by a producer not to poke the bear when discussing Wahlberg's past, and her reply, "What's he going to do? Punch the table?" became the new flashpoint, with critics accusing her of provoking intentionally, and supporters calling it classic Joy, fearless and honest. And the revelation reignited the debate, pushing Wahlberg back into headlines and forcing both camps to reckon with how public discourse had become less about ideas and more about personal takedowns. And in the months that followed, the View's guest bookings subtly shifted, with fewer outspoken celebrities agreeing to appear, unless they were guaranteed lighter interviews, while Wahlberg's film did surprisingly well at the box office, bolstered